Hello music fans, welcome to the Death by Unicorn channel and to another episode of my What's New 2023 series where I talk about new albums that came out over the past week in metal, rock, and prog. And I've just got to start off this week by saying, oh my god, Avenged Sevenfold, what is this? Let's talk about Life is But a Dream, the new album by Avenged Sevenfold. It's their 8th album. They're an American band, very well-known band. Started out in kind of more the metalcore scene for their first 2 albums. Then they went in a less hardcore, less screaming, more accessible, traditional heavy metal direction with their next 3 albums, which I love. Of course, City of Evil and their self-titled album, Avenged Sevenfold, and Nightmare, all really great albums that I enjoy a lot. But they still do a lot of really cool experimentation on those albums as well, have some progressive stuff and genre bending. They included some songs that were more orchestral and some that were more country sounding. And I didn't really like Hail to the King, which they did in 2013. I feel they kind of stopped experimenting with that. They played it too safe, sounded too similar to traditional bands like Iron Maiden and Metallica on that one. But their previous album, The Stage, got them back on track. Now let's talk about Life is But a Dream. This is very different. It's like avant-garde progressive metal. There's like classical music, metalcore, industrial pop, electronic, jazz, alternative, and hard rock, like all combined. The first single of this album, Nobody, sounds like a continuation of the sound from The Stage a little bit, but then the next single they released, We Love You, was really weird and all over the place. And now that I've listened to the whole album, I can say it's very strange but very interesting, and it's just all over the place. I think this is what Sleep Token wanted to do with their album, with all the genre bending. It's kind of what Sleep Token wishes they could do, but I don't know if they're capable of pulling it off to this level. Their album seems very juvenile compared to what Avenged Sevenfold does here. They do this genre bending with mastery in the composition, the performances, and the production. My favorite tracks on this album are Cosmic, which is the longest song on the album at just over 7 minutes, and G, which is a strange, progressive, and jazzy song that is wacky, like Frank Zappa and Mr. Bungle. Features some time signature changes, some female background vocals. I think this album is going to be very divisive. I think a lot of people will think it's amazing and the best thing they've ever done. But fans of their more straightforward, accessible hard rock stuff will find this very confusing and weird, a bit of a head scratcher. This album is for people who are fans of that weird stuff, though. Like, if you like Mr. Bungle, you'll probably like this. Or for people who just want bands that bring in a lot of different influences. For example, Beautiful Morning starts out sounding a lot like the song Them Bones by Alice in Chains. So they have some of that grungy influence on here. Ordinary sounds a lot like Get Lucky by Daft Punk to me, which is interesting and unexpected from Avenged Sevenfold. And then Death sounds like a jazzy big band crooner song in the style of Frank Sinatra or something from like the 1940s or 50s or something like that. Then the closing track and title track is a solo classical piano piece played by Sinister Gates, which is also unexpected and an interesting way to end the album. It's all very jarring and the styles and genres change quickly, but that to me keeps it interesting. Some of the moments are a little weird and I'm not sure yet if they hit, but there are moments when they do hit, it hits really hard and it's really good. The lyrics seem very philosophical and about a lot of things like life, death, and AI. It'll probably take me some more listens to digest it all for sure, as I've mostly been listening to the music and I've just done a couple listens so far. The guitar solos on the album are great as usual for Sinister Gates, but very different sounding than usual. I like how they all sound so different from each other in terms of like his guitar tone that he uses, the note choices, and the playing style that he does, and kind of the effects that he uses on them, as opposed to the previous albums where a lot of his guitar solos are a lot more similar to each other. This one, they're all very different. So check this out if you're wanting to hear Avenged Sevenfold take some risks, do some wacky genre bending stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, I think you'll like that. If that sounds scary, maybe avoid this one. Now, I've got a bunch of other albums that came out on June 2nd that I want to talk about. I think 5 albums that came out on June 2nd and 2 that came out on May 31st. That Avenged Sevenfold release has been my favorite of the week, but I'll talk about the rest in my order of preference as well. Starting with Einar Solberg and his album 16. This is progressive pop rock with metal, art rock, and symphonic influences. It's the debut album by this lead singer of Leprous, a Norwegian progressive rock and metal band. And his voice is very unique, high-pitched. It's a bit of an acquired taste, but once you acquire it, he is truly an amazing vocalist. My favorite tracks are Home, I think, is my favorite. Then Splitting the Soul is my second favorite. Home features Ben Levin. Splitting the Soul features Isan. Grotto is probably my third favorite. Then Over the Top would be my fourth favorite. So it was hard for me to even just pick one, so I had to pick 4 favorites there. So Einar features a lot of great artists on this album. Like I mentioned, Ben Levin from Bent Knee, Isan from Emperor, many more. He's got real strings and horn instruments on this album rather than samples, which I enjoy. A lot of his songs are slow burns that kind of build up into explosions and powerful climaxes. I was definitely surprised to hear some rap in the track that features Ben Levin, and even more surprised that I didn't dislike it, and I actually enjoyed the rap part. I don't usually like rap too much, at least lately. I liked it for a bit when I was like 13 years old, but lately I haven't been into that style of music. But it was kind of cool to hear here on one song on this album. The rest of the album is not rap though, don't worry about that. It's more like melodramatic, emotional, progressive pop rock with some sprinkles of metal here and there. Really cool, really great vocal melodies. Einar knows how to write a really catchy melody and just deliver it in epic, soaring vocals that go really high pitched, and he hits some pretty amazing high notes. Just quite an amazing singer. So check this out if that sounds appealing to you. Next I want to talk about Pupil Slicer and their album Blossom. This is mathcore with a lot of different influences from alternative, indie, post-rock, black metal, and death metal. It's the second album by this band from the UK. If you're a fan of Rollo Tomasi, I think you'll like this. This is another female-fronted metal band who combine mathcore, brutality, and intensity with beauty, atmosphere, and catchiness. It's a nice mix of harsh vocals and clean singing. And I heard the single Blossom, so I had to check this out after hearing that. I love Rollo Tomasi, and this band sounds like it could be the next one in that style that combines this mathcore with shoegaze and beauty. And my favorite track is the first track that I heard from this, which is the closing track and title track called Blossom. Next up, I'm going to talk about Foo Fighters and their album But Here We Are. This is alternative rock with hard rock, pop, and punk influences. It's the 11th album by this American band. This continues their excellent discography, where I feel like the only slight dip they had was their previous album. My favorite track on this one is Teacher, which is a 10-minute long tribute song to Dave Grohl's mother, Virginia, who was a teacher and who passed away shortly after. Their drummer, Taylor Hawkins, also passed away. So lots of tragedy in the Foo Fighters camp. Rest in peace. They are still making beautiful music. Josh Freese is now in the band on drums. He does a good job on this album. This isn't like progressive or anything super mind-blowing on this album, it's more straightforward alternative rock, but they always make really catchy stuff, really well produced, just great songwriters. Next, I want to mention Dirt Poor Robins. This came out on May 31st. It's an EP called Prelude to Firebird. And this is cinematic progressive rock with some pop, with some musical theater and alternative influences in there. Just really catchy melodies, great female vocals on here. To the Heights is a really catchy song, basically a pop song. It also has a great guitar solo. I look forward to hearing what they do next. I also really enjoyed their last full-length album, so can't wait to hear a full-length album from them. I also listened to Rival Sons' new album Darkfighter, which came out on June 2nd. This is hard rock with blues influences. It's the 7th album by this American band. And from the early single, I could tell this would have a bit of an old school vibe, but with modern production. If you're a fan of some of the old school hard rocky, bluesy rock bands like Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, I think you'll like this. And I actually read that in late 2023, there will be a companion album to this called Lightbringer. So looking forward to hear how that kind of complements this album. Also on the same day, Lars Fredrik Frøislie released an album called Fortellinger. This is progressive rock. It's the debut solo album from this keyboardist from the Norwegian band Wobbler. And this album has 4 rather long songs inspired mainly by medieval and Renaissance music, as well as Italian prog rock from the 70s. Lars plays most of the music. Nikolai Hangsley plays bass, but Lars plays everything else. The first and last songs are both prog epics that are just over 16 minutes in length. My favorite being the closing track, Naturens Cathedral. I don't know if I pronounced that properly. None of the lyrics in here are in English. I assume they're all in Norwegian, so I don't really know what they're talking about, but the music is very cool. It's very retro for fans of old school prog rock from the 70s. It's got a lot of those vibes to it. The vocals aren't as amazing. I prefer the Wobbler vocals, so it's not quite on the level of releases from the band Wobbler, but really great keyboards here from Lars. He's a great keyboard player, so if you want to hear some keyboard wizardry, this will be up your alley. And if you like Wobbler, you'll probably like this. It's kind of similar, but not quite on the same level as Wobbler music, which is a little bit better with the vocals. And lastly, I want to talk about Brainslug and their self-titled debut album. This is thrash metal, and it's very comedic. It's kind of like a comedic thrash metal band, just fun. It features YouTuber Bradley Hall on guitar, has a lot of great shredding and some fun songs. There's guest solos by great shredders, Bumblefoot on guitar, just amazingly good, and then Jordan Rudess on keyboards, also obviously amazingly good. He plays in Dream Theater. So this is just fun, silly thrash metal. The first song I heard from it was called Thrash Granddad, which was pretty fun. So check that out if you like silliness and thrash metal and awesome guitar shredding and solos and stuff. And that's it for this episode of What's New 2023. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see my future episodes. I do these pretty much every week, and then I usually do a monthly top 10 albums at the end of every month. So check those out. Let me know if I missed anything that came out over the past week that you think I would like, and let me know what you think of these albums that I talked about today. Until next time, peace out.